Good morning and welcome everyone from New Zealand. And for those who don't know Simon and myself, we're from Quantum Co-Creators, where we combine Aboriginal Dreamtime and true quantum healing.
Good morning.
And it's my very great pleasure today to introduce Sharron Martin, who's an amazingly beautiful woman living here in Auckland, New Zealand, with whom I've had the pleasure of spending some really good quality time with, and I'm honoured to call a friend. So welcome, Sharron.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
And we've all just been very privileged to have a beautiful meditation with Sharron just now. And she's taken us into the heart of Gaia. And so I guess a good place to start would also by saying a very, very good morning to Gaia. Mm-hmm. And thank you for welcoming us to your place that Sharron will explain to our viewers here. So perhaps, Sharron, you could begin by telling our audience a little of your background and how you originally connected to Gaia.
Yes. Well, in speaking about my background, I think the easiest thing to say is that I come from a really large family. I always have felt like many light workers, that I'm here but not here, that I'm connected but not connected. And I've done my own kind of practice from quite a young age, where in my dream time I would meet the ascended masters. I would do interesting things. So I would walk the beach with Jesus. I'd walk in a rose garden with Mary, and I never really conjured it up. It just started to occur. And then I've been a teacher for a lot of my life, work that I really loved and work where I know I made a difference, but I always knew that there would be a time when I would be prompted to be a teacher on a different platform. So that's what I'm doing now. And so I first met Gaia when I started going to a meditation group with Glenn Lewis, who's in West Auckland and Murderwine. He's an amazing channel and psychic, and it was in his meditations that I started to see Gaia more and more clearly. And I said to him, you know, I really see her, and I see her like this. And he said, yes, that's how he sees her as well. And then it just became clearer, and I'd see more aspects and I'd feel more connected to her. And then I said to him one day, because he paints the Ascended Masters, when are you going to paint Gaia? And he looked at me and he said, well, I think you are. And I went, maybe. and I've learned that in my nature, it's my nature to do things too soon, to be, as one of a healer I went to a long time ago said, you know, God doesn't work fast enough for you. And I'm like, whoops. So that's been part of my lesson, is to just sit back and be a bit more present and not try and, you know, race ahead. So I waited, and in Easter in 2015, I think, I was prompted to, you know, get out of this house and go up and buy a big canvas. And I'm like, okay. And then I bought a small canvas, because I said, oh, I'm not starting on that straight off. I need a practice run. You know, I've been an artist, but I've never painted people. And I've never done this. I guess I've done channeled art, but not in terms of people. So I ended up creating this thing. And then I looked at it and I thought, well, that's a load of rubbish. And I walked away from it, and I messaged a friend, and she said, best not to diss God's work. And I thought, oh, that's a good chastisement. And so I took a breath and I went back to the painting, and I heard, right, do this. And so I followed the instructions, and the instructions were, get a really wide brush down it, and then you can begin. And as soon as I did that to what I'd put on there, this image started to appear. And so I ended up painting this angel presence, who is my personal guardian angel, I discovered, and her name is Alora. So that was my beginning point. And then I started bringing through, and so I didn't do any sketching or anything of Gaia. It just came through bit by bit. I think spirit brings things through the paintbrush. I painted the amethyst. I couldn't believe that it looked like amethyst when I finished painting it, because it just sort of came out. And it isn't that I didn't go back in and add detail, but that's kind of how it ended up on the canvas. And interestingly, she went through a lot of transformation. I would be painting parts of her and I would be guided to paint in a color, and I knew it wasn't that color. So I'm painting in a color and I know it's not that color. And then I'm told, right now, paint it in this color. So for example, her heart, her crystalline heart has probably got 40 different layers of colors before I started making it look crystalline. Her body went through looking like lots of different beings. So she looked African, she looked like a Black American at some point. She looked like Rachel Hunter at one point. She just went through all this transformation, and I just kept working with it and working with it. And then at one point I said to her, and I had to go through process as well. So I sat with her, meditated with her. Some days I didn't do any painting. I just sat in front of her and talked with her. And then one day I said to her, well, when am I going to finish painting you? And she said, well, not till you've decluttered this space. So that was my next thing. So I went through a lot of purification, a lot of personal process and working with her, as I have done with the other temples. So that's part of this job that Spirit has given me. And she was the foundation painting, is to paint the spiritual temples from the etheric realms. And so they have taken me through their process as well. So I meet with her most days, and in a way, I don't really know what the process is for that. I think I astral travel there. It feels like that's what I do. And so I sit with her, I get given things around the energies of the world, I get given messages that she wants me to pass on, and a lot of information about what's to come. And so I try and put that out when I have time, and there's not enough time for me to put out everything. But it's been really, like I'm really touched in my heart. I feel so blessed and so privileged that I get to work with her. I definitely have past life connections with her. She sometimes calls me sister, and sometimes she calls me daughter. But I feel a very close, loving connection with her, and she loves all of us. She really does love each of us so very much, and wants the very best for us, for humanity, and for the planet. And so that's why she, part of her kind of pledge to us is to hold that emotional pond, to be cleansing the emotions of humanity. So yeah, in that time, after I finished painting her, then I started being shown other things. So, for example, we've gone in through this process of clearing the inner earth. And so it was shown in metaphors to me as though giant nets were passed through. So, the first net had really wide spaces in it and removed quite clunky stuff from the inner earth, like they could have been old vehicles, they had that kind of appearance. And so these various pass-throughs, and that would be cleared off and transmuted. And then a little while later, there would be another pass-through with a finer net, and it just went on and on and on. And it would be also affecting humanity. So we would be having that in our personal physical bodies. So it went from this big wide net down to the last pass through was like a silk stocking. And each of those processes would have a focus. So she would say, so this is clearing out cellular memory related to your patriarchal lines. And then this is related to clearing out things related to karma from Atlantis. And so it would go through a whole lot of processes. Sometimes it would be having an emotional focus, sometimes mental, sometimes physical, sometimes cellular, but always energetic in that form. And then after the last pass through, I was shown this ceremony, this process really, that the dragons, so I've been introduced to the dragons as well in there. So I have to say dragons exist in the etheric, and I have beautiful connections with the dragons. But the dragons were there and they were heating the rocks. It was like a basalt rock, and they were heating the rocks, and in the heating of it, the rocks were expanding, and then they were extracting these things that looked like molten, fused golden glass. It had a translucency and it had a transparency to it. And inside were these other symbols that looked like they were made of metal. And when I asked what that was, I was told that the dark forces had embedded these bricks, with these symbols and codes held in them, in these rocks in the inner earth, and it was to hold the planet in lower frequency, was to hold us in lower or in greater density, so we couldn't ascend, because the dark, the satanic, that aspect of our world, they can't exist as we ascend to higher dimensional frequencies. And so it was in their interest to stop us from doing that. So I watched these, it was amazing. I watched these be extracted, and then I watched them being destroyed and transmuted and released. And so one of the other things that I saw was the dragons rounded up in the inner earth. They rounded up and evacuated. They didn't exterminate, they evacuated the dark from the inner earth. So I know that needs clarification. So the inner earth is like the inner part of the earth, not the external part of the inner earth. There's a differentiation that Gaia makes. So the inner earth had to be cleared so it could come back into its own harmony and frequency, so the actual planet could begin to ascend, and we each affect the other. So in a way, you know, the planet doesn't need us in order to ascend. The planet can ascend on its own, but this is the love that Gaia has for us. So she wants humanity to be able to do that. So anyway, the inner earth was cleared, and that was like phase one. And the dragons were doing that. So they evacuated, and then so they showed them out through various portals, and then there was a day when I went down there and I'm like, oh, the dragons, oh, look what the dragons are doing. And they were like in teams, and they were streaming, and they were being vigilant. They were hunting. So they were hunting out the ones who didn't evacuate in a voluntary way. And they took them and evacuated them from the inner earth. So yeah, so phase two is the outer earth and the surface of the earth, and Gaia's sort of expressed that happening in three phases, and other beings express it happening in more phases than that. And I think it doesn't really matter. We're moving through phases of clearing and lightening, and we are, we've moved through the galaxy as well. In the time I've worked with her, she said we're moving further into the photonic belt. We're moving closer to the galactic center. Hold on to your hats. It's going to be a ride. We'll feel big frequencies. Sleep when you need to sleep. Eat food that's nutritious. Be hydrated. Get in nature. All of those basic things that we all need to do. And now it's even, it's even more cranked up. So we've got to be more vigilant with our basic processes.
Wow, what an incredible story. You have so much information to offer.
Oh, it's really incredible. And she gives me words that I don't even know the meaning of, but when I look them up, they're a match, they fit the context.
Wow. So we know that we're coming to an end of a cycle.
Mm-hmm.
And some say we're entering what we call the new earth. So Sharon, how is Gaia feeling at this moment as she's going through this transition?
Well, it's interesting because she has been saying to me that we need to be encouraging everybody to look at things from more perspectives than one. So we can see that there are things that are happening on a very three-dimensional level that many of us don't like. Many of us are not in sync with, that makes us feel uncomfortable. And so that's one aspect we can see. And then on a different aspect, we can see that it has purpose in some form, that a lot of the things that are going on are having an effect of compression for people, where they're being squeezed, where they're being asked to release some of their materialistic values, to create a more community-minded approach, to look at ways of doing things differently, to shed some of those habits that we've created in our world of possessions being more important than connections, and of the accumulation of funds being more important than the sharing. And so she has been saying that some of these things incrementally. So the very first part of this year, she said to me that what had been released in terms of the virus, for example, when I asked her about that, she said very strongly, man-made, in a laboratory in the States, taken to China, released there. All designed to slow down Ascension, all designed to create a bit of chaos and havoc to slow down Ascension. And that then what happened was it kind of got turned a bit inside out, and so the people got to spend some time with themselves, you know, so some time to connect with their inner being, some time to be more quiet with family. And so in the outer world, it was that people were told to stay home in many cases, and they were given a lot of fear-mongering from the various media kind of outlets. And so, you know, that created the energy of fear, which of course is what the dark aspects like. That's what they like to take from us, to energize themselves with, or as some people say, to feed from. But on the higher aspect, on the higher level, it gave people opportunity to spend time in family, to recognize the value of that, and to perhaps spend some time in greater contemplation of self, and to see what values were important. And then, you know, the next kind of process around that, she spoke about that being a time for people to see how they can be more community focused, and to share resource, and to move into that. And certainly where I lived, there was a lot more of that. There were beautiful messages of people saying, and I've got all these extra things from my garden, you can come and pick them up here, or give me a yell and I'll deliver them. There's that sort of, you know, community engagement. And then more recently, she's saying that we're moving into this phase now where people are being asked to really look at how they can move into harmony with nature, to move into greater synchronicity and recognition that nature actually has got it sorted. It's just that we interfere with it all the time. You know, so nature has its cycles of life and birth and death and regeneration, and it does things in terms of seasons, and in terms of cycles, and in terms of light and dark, and with the sun and the moon, and that we need to be moving back to more of that. So that's, I guess that's one of the aspects. So she described where we're at now in a number of ways. So I've got a few beautiful metaphors. So she says, if this were a soccer game or a football game, depending where you live, and the game, let's say, between Spain and France, and one team's won, the game is over, the players have left the pitch, and the spectators are scrapping. So the game's won, but the spectators are still scrapping. They're knocking over the seats, the posts, and punching one another, but the game is won. And so that's one of her metaphors. And another metaphor that that I've been sharing with people is this idea. So she talks about, initially she spoke to me about there being two sort of timelines or tunnels or portals, if you like, and a third one that didn't have much energy. So she said we don't need to focus on that. But of the two, one has a distinct new world focus, that AI, that very controlled manipulation of humanity losing their freedoms. So that's one timeline. And then another timeline is this coming into the heart and coming into greater consciousness and working with unconditional love. And so for the last, I guess, well, probably most of this year, she has been, telling me to say to people, there's that and there's that. You can choose, but you have to choose. No one is going to tell you that that is what you have to do, but you need to make a choice. It needs to be a conscious choice. Where do you want to be? And then this other metaphor of we need to be the witness, the observer. And she said, so we've got this river. It's full of debris, it's murky, it's stagnant, it's a bit smelly. And so, that's the parallel to the New World Order. And then there's this river. It's crystalline, it's clear, it's flowing, it's sparkly, and it's full of love, and it's full of light workers who want to bring the world to this new place. And so her message to everyone is, if you're in the murky river, you need to make a choice as well. How long will you stay there? A lot of people have got caught up and, I need to know that, I need to understand that. And so her thing is this: you do not have to understand all that is going on in the world to know that there are things going on that you don't want to have a part of. And so she's saying, you just keep your eye on that river, but you keep your focus in this one. So you swim in the clear, crystalline, flowing, amazing river, and you just keep an eye on that other river. But it's like driving a car, if you're driving a car and you're looking at the landscape over there, that's where your car goes. It's where focus goes, energy flows. We just have to remember that. So our job, if you regard yourself as a light worker or a light warrior, then your job is this. Your job is to be centered, balanced, aligned, and grounded. She's talking about basic spiritual functions, basic spiritual practice. Your job is to hold that place, to hold the light, and you just allow your field to be the holder of light. You transmute whatever comes into your field. You transmute that for yourself and for humanity. You don't have to go looking for it. You just are continually having good spiritual hygiene, clearing your field, clearing your body, and holding that higher vibration. And then collectively, we're doing that. And it's like when we're collectively holding that vibration, it's this idea that the edges of that vibration are looking at the heels of the people who aren't quite there. And so they'll get pulled in, and that will grow and grow and grow. So that was her thing to light workers a little while ago. If you're in that river, you need to figure out how long you're going to stay there, because if you stay there, you'll end up drowning in it. It's very dark and deep, and you just don't want to be in there on your own. So your choice, it's always about choice. We always have choices.
That's really beautiful, Sharon. And that actually brings me to my next question, because we all know that grounding is really important. And one of the discussions I had with Simon this week was perhaps the reason why this came up as having a chat with you around grounding to Mother Earth, because we use a method of grounding which connects our hearts to the heart of Mother Earth, and we use all of those divine waters as well.
Yes.
But with the increasing evidence that the Earth is hollow, that as you've described it just now, with numerous interdimensional species coming and going, and with the deep underground military bases and the vast networks of tunnels being used for human trafficking, I feel a little bit unsure of what I'm actually grounding to these days. So I was wondering if you would be able to throw some light on this from Gaia's point of view. Now, you did give us a very special meditation at the beginning, but I'd like you to kind of share that with our viewers here as well, if you would.
Yes, so there's different kind of segments, I guess, in the Earth. And certainly when I travel to here, when I go here, so this is a print of the Painting of Gaia. And when I travel to there, I'm moving through the crust of the earth, and then I'm dropping down through a space. And in that space, or that opening, you know, I can see other parts of the inner earth, and I can see two of the inner earth cities. I can see the lights that come. And I've visited those inner earth cities, but not doing this work with Gaia. I actually visited them in a different way another time. And you know, there's in a landscape of beauty, beaches and oceans and things. So, you know, there's a lot of what we have on the outer earth and the inner earth. But the duns are more what she regards as surface. So, you know, they sit on even though they're deep, they sit on the surface. So for example, so when she speaks to me, she doesn't go into all the detail of the dark. It's the we're always working with the outcome. So, for example, the children. So, you know, a lot of us are really concerned about the children. So let's just talk about that for a moment, the trafficking of children and the the ritual abuse and sacrificing of children. So, you know, I in my spiritual work, in my past life work, I've often been amazed how many people have been sacrificed, for example. So when I'm moving through their wounding and looking at their past lives, and I'm saying, oh, okay, so that wound actually came from a dagger that was plunged into you in a lifetime where you're laid out on this slab and you were a child, and it was a sacrifice. And so I knew that had gone on, but I didn't understand the extent of it, for example. So I guess we can look at that from a few viewpoints. So first of all, this planet used to be a fifth dimensional planet, and humanity was given this choice of free will. So there's God's will, or thy will and my will, and humanity's will, and was never imagined that humanity would descend into some of the behaviors that came. And then there was invasion and infiltration and all sorts of things like that. But what we can know is that we're moving back. We're shifting frequencies and moving higher. So in some ways, our soul creates its own contract before we come. And so it's the soul is, you know, not all of the soul is about experience. That's probably the easiest way. So we could say that, you know, many souls have chosen that as an experience, and it doesn't mean an experience to be with the dark, but an experience of being there in order to shift the light. And so that, you know, that's one way of viewing it. The other thing is that the planets needed purging on the surface. So the fires, for example, when the fires occurred in Australia, I tuned in and got quite a lot of information about that. And I asked Gaia how long they would burn for and what could be done. And she said, this is a purging. She said, there's a lot of blood in the soil of Australia. There's a lot of death, massacre, murder, and there's a lot of blood to be purged from the soil, to be purged from the ground. And so that's why these fires have taken place. And so that was, you know, from a higher dimensional place, she was speaking of that. From another place, we know that some of the fires around the world have been made through, I don't know, electrical weaponry or magnetic electrical weaponry. But she was speaking of it from that perspective. And when I asked her about putting them out, she said that she will begin that process from under the earth, because otherwise the earth will crack hugely because it's so dry from the fires. And she said she will do that before the rains will come. And what she showed me was as though it was like first aid. It was like she had these huge cotton wool blankets that were saturated with liquid, with water, with I'm not sure what, but you know, they looked like they were just wet. And she was placing them up from the inner earth underneath Australia. where the fires were, and doing this to them, soothing the earth from underneath and quenching the earth from underneath, so that when the water came, it didn't create huge ravines and great cracks. The earth would be able to absorb the water. And so I saw her do that, and then I think 5 days later the rains came. So it's pretty touching, really. I'm so privileged to kind of witness a lot of this stuff. But yeah, that's what she was talking about. We're moving. So the planets move several times. We've recently had a shunt. We've had a shunt through the galaxy. It was a timeline shift, and it was as though, if you imagine that the giant had our planet in its hand and just went off. And so that was said that many of us might experience that as nausea, as feeling dizzy, ungrounded, and then that it also might come with this kind of feeling of having a hangover. That was my experience of it. I'm like, I only drank water. I woke up feeling like I had a terrible hangover, and it took an entire 30 hours before it shifted. So we've been through several of those, but this was a big shunt. This was, like someone giving us a good kick. And so that was a movement through to a higher place. And now, so from October through to the end of the year, so I've been having more conversations with God, if you like, lately, and he showed me about the shunt in Gaia, talked to me about that being a time shift, a dimensional timeline jump. So we are headed for our new Earth. I've seen it, by the way. I'll tell you about it in a moment. It's just glorious.
Beautiful. Kind of brings me to ask Simon if you want to ask Sharon a question. I know Sharon's actually answered all my questions about the fires to a certain extent, and so I wonder whether you wanted to just wrap up with your final question, Simon.
Oh yeah, just before you do that, I have it. Look, honestly, it's because I get so much information, but I didn't get back to the children. So what Gaia said was that there would be many children who would be removed. But and I don't know how accurate this number is, but she said 200,000 would be rescued, as in they would survive the ordeal. And it's great that we have so many beautiful people in our world who want to hold space and love for them. But we need to go to that place of recognizing there are things going on here in our world that are not part of what we want to have, and so we focus on what we want, so we're not dragged into it, and we go to the higher place of recognizing that souls come for experiences, and they come for those experiences in order for growth, for soul growth in their inner being, in their soul families, and their soul groups, for the collective of creator, I guess, and for the planet.
Beautiful, thank you.
The one question I had was, like, we know that we're co-creators in this magical life, and you did touch on it before, but I just wanted to finish off with what we can give our viewers. What can we do as individuals to help Gaia go through this transition? Yes,
so the first part of that is in reference to what we spoke of before about, having good practice. Keep your focus on what you want, recognizing that you have huge power, and it's getting stronger and stronger. The more clear you get, the more you clear out your density. So that our whole process of ascension for both the planet and humanity is to clear out the density, bring in more light, integrate and embody the light, clear out more density. That's the process we've been going through. So our cells are clearing out, our cells are being flushed out. And that's gone through various kind of processes, like, at one point it was as though there was water lifting the cells, and so the last little grains of sand could come out from behind. At one point our cells got a toroidal flush, but it's this process of releasing and then more coming in. and then embodying it and integrating, and then releasing a bit more, and then bringing in codes. So we've had codes that are coming in that look like crystal rain. Recently, there's a blog on my site about it if anyone wants to read it. These codes are codes and codices that have been coming down, and they're specifically designed to activate our DNA stranding, which has been going on. My understanding, what I've been shown, that has been going on for ever since I started working with her. Not long after that, things were coming in to activate our DNA. And so personally, I'm not convinced that that can happen, and we've gone from 2 strands to 12. But some people are saying that. So, well, this is another thing that I believe, is that many things can sit alongside one another that don't look as though they can belong. But many truths can exist, and that one truth existing doesn't mean that the other is false. We will all have different experiences, and so it's good to just acknowledge that to people, that each of us will have a different experience that we would have arranged or that we've chosen. So now I'm lost. Poke me, tell me what I'm answering again. People, what people have to do. So it's holding that light, it's holding that focus. So that's one thing. And the other thing is to be imagining up our new earth. So the thing to avoid is fear, is contraction, being dragged into the blame game, anything that sort of takes you off track, that puts you into anxiety. You want to avoid that. You want to keep out of those negative emotions, because they'll hold you down, and aim to be in your heart and in connection to nature and in connection with one another, so that we've got like strandings and threadings of co-creation. And it's about conjuring up the feelings. It's the feelings that will bring us into our new world or our new earth, because, you know, we'll be sitting in unconditional love in our hearts, and we will be sitting in this place of recognizing that every single being that's on our earth has equal status. You know, the elephant is just as important to the earth as I am. The ant is just as important as the elephant. The kauri tree is just as important as the sequoia. The rivers are just as important as the oceans. So each of those aspects is a living entity. It holds spirit, it holds energy, and many of our nature devas are going to make themselves more visible now. We've really anchored very strongly a 4th dimensional field, if you like. I don't see the 4th dimension as its own space. I kind of see it as like an edge, to be honest. I see it as the place we move through to get to the 5th. But we have anchored the beginnings of 5th dimensional frequency in as well. Many are beginning to feel the edges of that, and so our job is to keep anchoring that in, to make it stronger by being in it, by being with it, by holding that unconditional love. And then it's as though you can begin to conjure up what you would want life to be like in your ideal world. We are moving back to paradise. We're moving back to the Garden of Eden. We might not be there tomorrow, but we are going to know by January that we're in a different place. So if you go to my YouTube channel, there's a couple of creative visualizations around our new world. And they're short, and so Gaia and I are going to do some more, but it's just the idea of, it's like laying in the template. You know, that's what we need to do first, is lay in the energy of that template. A lot of people already have purpose and missions for the new world, creating templates in various forms. Lots of people who come to me, their work that they're being given, their new missions are really interesting things, like realigning the ley lines, realigning the rivers that man has shifted in order to put some structure in. They all need to come back into place. Planting the giant trees or gridding where the giant trees goes. Yeah, there's lots of different kind of jobs like that people are given. Our new earth. So when I saw our new earth, I was off in space, and I want to tell you that it was like this. So it had a golden glow, and the golden glow pulsed, and so you could see this, and then you could hear, I could hear this hum from the planet. I could hear this hum, this resonance, this vibration of sound from the planet, and it just filled my heart. It was just quite spectacular. So that's where we're sort of on the way to being, or on the being to landing. And what Gaia says about this month of October is that it's a crossover month. So we are going to watch more decay, more structures dissolving, and watch new things coming in. But it's very much this. So she speaks of this process of is happening in a gentle, is probably not the right word, but anyway, in a gentle way. She's most worried about humanity suffering from cognitive dissonance, but maybe we can speak of that in a moment. But in terms of the earth, it's as though this year, she said to me, would be the year of truth. Truth would be revealed from within ourselves and within the on the earth, within the planet, within our entire sort of social structures. That the foundations would be ripped out, and that we would begin to see structures dissolving, and then we will move into, like, through all of those sort of social arms, I guess. So education, finance, agriculture, energy, health, medical, all of those aspects would change. But she said that this year we would see, like, the foundations ripped out in terms of policy, in terms of leaders, and in terms of the kind of the things that they were landed on. And we've watched a lot of that, haven't we? We've seen that a lot of CEOs were resigned, and that things are shifting. And then she said that in this time we would see, like, the cornices of she's showing it through each of those being a multi-story building. So that's our third dimensional world. And then the foundation of the building gets ripped out. So let's say that one represents health. And then the cornices start to crumble. And then there's like a net or scaffolding put over the top. And so the idea of that is so that humanity can go, oh, I recognize that. That's health. Oh, that's changing. Oh, I have an understanding of that. Oh, those are new ideas. Oh, I like those. Oh, I could get used to that. Because we know, this might be news to, it won't be news to you two, but it might be news to some of the viewers. We do not need to have sickness and unwellness in our world. Disease does not need to exist in our world, and we are shifting to a place where it won't. We will choose to leave the planet when we've done the work that we want to do here, when we've had this soul expansion, evolution experience. We'll choose to leave. Death will become a phenomena that is gone. You know, that's a hard thing to get your head around. And health will be all about wellness, well-being, and wellness through all systems and structures as well. Physical body, the landscape, the inner earth, the outer earth, buildings, plants, our skies. So, you know, for some people it'll be news that we've been poisoned through our waters, our air, through our systems. And so we're moving out of that, and that's going to be a beautiful thing. So this new way of being. So let's talk about back to health. So hospitals will go. Hospitals will have an energy that doesn't belong in our new world. So they will completely go. That's my view. They won't be created as new housing or, they will disappear. Health workers will have a shift. Because, many people who work in the health system, they have a love for well-being, they have a love for people, they have beautiful hearts full of compassion. And so, they will find a new niche, a new direction. But we, the pharmaceutical industry, which has driven a lot of decisions in our world, backed by the big money-holding groups, if you like, or families, the pharmaceuticals would disappear. The medicines that we have will be more along health support, along those sorts of lines, with natural therapies and medicines. So, that's one of the interesting things about the New World Order, isn't it? It wants to take away our right to have organic food. It wants to have us having synthetic, factory-made food, and natural medicines and therapies made illegal. So if you don't know about that, you might want to do some research around that, because that's maybe not to your liking. Certainly isn't to mine.
Sharon, I can see that we could have many, many, many more of these discussions, and it's been absolutely fabulous listening to you and hearing from Gaia, and very reassuring. What a beautiful, beautiful vision for the future. And
it is, and when you say that, I just have tingles going all over my body.
Yeah, the next 30 days are going to be very important. I think we just need to just hunker down and just really hold, just take note of everything that you've said. Just be kind to yourself, nourish yourself.
Yeah, and really hold that vision of being in a world that's full of love.
Yeah, and ground and align, which is, and I'd like to say that down below of this video, we'll put all your details so that people can find their way to your website. And also the details will be for some wonderful grounding and aligning that Simon and I also do with quantum co-creators. And
yes, and it's beautiful. You've done that grounding with me, if it's the same one, quite a few months ago, and it's really, really wonderful. So if you get an opportunity to do that, folks, tune into that.
Thank you, Sharon. So I hope that this will be the first of many of these little get-togethers, and I want to thank you for sharing your time with us today, and hope we can do this again very, very soon.
Love to. Yeah, it's really, really good to be able to get Gaia's sort of information out anywhere to the world.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Sharon. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon.
Up with one of your beautiful meditations to ground us out, Sharon, because they are so wonderful. I'd love to share it with the world.
Okay, so let's just take a breath in through the nose and close the eyes. You just feel your feet on the ground. And just gently breathing in and out, but taking note of your physical body. And visualize your energy dropping down so you can really feel the energy of your body in your sit bones, in your butt, on your chair, and in your feet. And feel the energetic connection between the soles of your feet and the surface of the floor or the earth. And know that in many ways you are a conduit between the energies from above and the energies for the planet and for self, and that this new way of being on the earth is not to be energetically out of your body, but very strongly grounded in your body, and your process for bringing in the change is for it to come down through your body and into the earth, into your earth star crystalline chakra, and then it comes up into the body when it's ready in the perfect divine timing and gets housed in your body in cellular form. And so maybe you're just feeling now a little tingling in your body, as say for that, for many that little activation experience just happened. Remember to be kind to yourself and be kind to others. Be gentle with self. Make connections with people through the heart. Be connected to Gaia. Feel the love from her. And visualize that you are already with your feet on the ground in our new earth, this vibrating, resonant being of light that you are becoming. And it isn't that we will become just energy, and our new world will be in physical form, just less dense. And just spend a few moments here feeling the love in your body, in the heart, around your body. And imagine with every breath out, there's some love that just gets sent from your being to that is around you, to nature, to animals, to family. And I send you so much love from our hearts and from the heart of Gaia. So take a breath and open your eyes when you're ready.
Oh, thank you so much, Sharon. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon.
I'll stop the recording now.